Thank you for introduction. Yes, I think it's almost 4 years ago when I started the first session about the capabilities of Enterprise Architect to import, export stuff and to make some ELM, PLM situations in life. And over time, we identified, especially for enterprise architecture domain, but also for other domains that enterprise architect is supporting, that the integration of foreign data into the modeling approach is useful. But sometimes it's a huge amount of data that you want to get into enterprise architect, and a manual process is not very comfortable. And so we thought about how getting that in automation. So about the agenda, why do we need import-export capabilities or other approaches of data interchange in Enterprise Architect? So there are other approaches than import-export, so live data is an example. And we will talk about the built-in capabilities, about automation capabilities, and of course, as it is a technical session, I promise it will be a very technical session, we do some live stuff as well. Why do we need integration? The issue or the challenge is that Enterprise Architect is a wonderful tool for modelers and people that know about modeling principles, methodology, having some clue about the modeling languages and architecture approaches, but not all of the stakeholders are aware of models. And very often we hear this, can we get an Excel out of it? Or can we have a PowerPoint out of it? Or can we feed the system with an Excel? And this is a very common thing. And sometimes we have the feeling that Excel is our main competitor, which is not, as it is just a calculation sheet, but it is a very often used environment to get lists and information out of systems. And so with Excel, everything started, but the world is not only Excel, it's a lot of other systems you will see later. So collaboration and stakeholder engagement, to mean making models more worth, is very helpful if you have a better presentable data presentation. The integration itself, of course, maybe you have a single point of knowledge, meaning a list of users, a list of applications and functions, a list of service cases, or you have maybe also business processes and more. So the interaction with other tools is also a very common aspect that you want to have and integrate instead of rebuilding and remodeling everything. You want to use that knowledge and maybe be able not only to import, but import and update it in a clever way. Data migration is also a case because there are already legacy systems. So software in domain is not that new anymore. And some software products are gone already. And to get the data alive or have a strategy how data could be alive is a very important thing. So we have, as an extreme sample, nuclear waste stations where they're planning about how to conserve data or information about that for 100,000 years. This is maybe extreme, but this is also a topic that we should be able to address so that we don't lose information over time. Of course, we want to comply with standardization and compliance. Maybe there is a compliance platform or another platform that provides specific analysis and visualizations that you want to be able to integrate. You want to have a cross-platform collaboration capability, and Enterprise Architect is very strong on that. The Sparx platform provides a lot of open-minded integrations with other systems. Of course, you want to automatically generate stuff. So if you have the knowledge in a repository, then everything is about automation. You don't want to do everything manually. Boring jobs, don't make it double or triple or whatever. Do it once and do automation. So this is my magic word of the year. Do automation, make more of your models by just generating things out of it. Could be a document, could be other diagrams, could be an export, could be a supply chain that you want to fulfill. And of course, it's interesting also for interoperability between other enterprise architecture frameworks. This is a very specific thing to enterprise architecture. But there we have the situation that there are tools focusing on a specific industry or a specific tool vendor or ERP vendor. Then it's very important to be interoperable. So then you have the C-level tool that is very expensive and nobody is really wanting to feed it, but then the management wants it because it's expensive, and then you have the really blue-collar workers doing the real work. And very often enterprise architect is more in this situation that we have the people doing real work with real tools. What does enterprise architect provide by default? It's maybe not new, but XMI, including diagram interchange, is provided by enterprise architect in the current version. So I think it's 2.5.2. I just try to get rid of version numbers, but sometimes it's a topic to know the version number. So we try to apply to the latest standards. One issue with XMI, it's a nice approach, but the diagram interchange as a good sample is not really working very well. For structure, yes, but the reference data, the project data is somehow missing. Then in Enterprise Architect, we have since ever the customizable CSV import that allows also to preserve hierarchy or nesting of elements, and also provides the possibility to have tagged values as additional attributes to your environment. But nothing more. It's really focusing on elements and structure of the elements. Then we have capabilities to publish and export to eCore, to ArcGIS, BPMN 2.0, XML, XPDL, OVL, RDF. So it's a resource document format. Normative XMI. We can import things that are kind of secret because we don't want to make advertising for other tools. But we are supporting the MD-zip format, including more or less good diagrams. So we can import from Magic Draw very well. We can import EMF, UML2, Rhapsody. We can also, again, PPMN 2.0. I think this is the best representative of a well-defined format. So if you have a proper PPMN 2.0 tool, then you can really rely on this interchange format for PPMN, but only PPMN. For DMN, there is another interchange format, OVL again. For Office, we have a huge improvement done. There is a new version that really includes really powerful templates for Excel, as an example, including the full structure of a repository, meaning attributes, meaning issues, topics, and so on and so forth, but also connectors. So this is a really powerful capability that is provided by MDG for Office. We have things like a Word import and export capability. Export is document generation, but import capability if you have a well-structured Word document. In the real world, I have not seen that often really well-structured Word documents, but you can provide a template, and if it is a well-filled out template, then you can also import it. Then, of course, we have the PowerPoint capabilities to make some diagrams visible in PowerPoint. It's I always think it's part of gamification, but there is a real world usage for it. I really like much more the SVG exporter that we have right now. We have also a native format since version 15. We have a native format that is supporting, it's more or less a database dump. So it's a really fast possibility, and you can be sure that all aspects of an enterprise architect repository is included. There is a project import-export that is having all the project reference data as well, but there's also a native format for XMI-like style, and then it's only the structure that is relevant for the models and the diagrams. Then there is a nice feature. There's a little bit missing automation so far. Maybe I have missed it, but there is a nice feature that's called data miner. So if you have a structured data in JSON, again, Excel or ODBC data or any website that you want to import using data miner, then the technique is based on model scripting, but you can of course include the full structure and also diagram for it. If you have some time today, I will go into the data miner at the end of the session, because it's a feature that is not seen very often, and I think it's worth to have an eye on it, as it is a nice approach of providing structured information, including diagram capabilities or diagramming capabilities. For Enterprise Architect, of course, you can use the default capabilities, but you have also add-ins that you can use. I think almost every feature here, except the MDG for Office, are reachable with the Enterprise Architect API. Of course, you can write your own add-ins. This is one of the powerful features of Enterprise Architect, that you can fully automate Enterprise Architect since ever. Of course, it's automation of a desktop application. So a lot of interoperations are user operations. So you are simulating more or less user operations. but it's nice because you can do almost everything and reduce manual efforts. We have a very powerful scripting engine now updated to JavaScript latest version, and now we are getting rid of Visual Basic because Microsoft is not supporting it very well anymore. But the Visual Basic JavaScript implementation is very powerful. And of course, as we are in the market since more than 20 years, we have kind of a lot of third parties implementing integrations with the Enterprise Architect API. I've seen it sometimes also on servers. The issue is that Enterprise Architect is a desktop application and the API is a desktop API as well. So meaning ActiveX controls and OLE, object linking embedding, COM, common object model from Windows mainly. So they're running it on a server is not a good idea, and Microsoft really tried to get rid of it since version Windows Server 2012. So if you have no user active on the server, and nobody wants to have a user active on their server, then running Enterprise Architect API on the server is an issue. By the way, it's also not allowed from the end user license agreement, but I have seen it so far. But again, Microsoft is trying to avoid, because it makes the server very in danger. But since some years, we have also other possibilities. We have the Sparx ProCloud server. Sparx ProCloud server comes as a free edition, of course, but we have, of course, also commercial editions. And with the commercial editions comes integrations. And currently we have things like application lifecycle management. It's HP Quality Center. We have a JAMA integration, Chess integration. I've forgotten, they have changed their name recently. They don't name it Chess anymore. They have a new name for their platform. The free names, the IBMs. Then we have a Jira and Confluence integration. In Germany, we would say Jira, but Jira. Polarion is a recent, one of the latest ones. Then Azure DevOps or former Team Foundation Server integration, Rig, ServiceNow, Autodesk, Bactilla, and you see also some CRM integration capabilities with Salesforce. But if it's only files, also Dropbox integration, or you can make an integration with other Enterprise Architect models as well. So, and of course, every integration has different capabilities and possibilities, and therefore it's not always the same. Of course, we try to improve it, whatever the partner product or the foreign integration partner is providing, the better the integration is or the weaker the integration is. But it's a good sample, and what we also deliver, our plan is, I have seen an enormous list that we are planning for the future. Let me name it like 30 to 40 other integrations that are on our desk that we want to implement to make life easier for people that want to do some integration with some tool that is a little bit more popular. Could be either on the application lifecycle management journey or on the product lifecycle management journey, but it could also be ERP systems or CRM systems or single sign-on systems like Entra or others, where we just want to import users or user groups or rights or assigned rights that are also maybe relevant for your enterprise architecture or your ecosystem that you want to model. So we have the plan here to have enormous number of additional integrations. I'm not sure what is the logic, which one is coming first, but maybe we will have announcement sooner or later about that, what we are planning in this direction. For ProCloud Server, of course, it would not be Sparx if we would not provide the possibility to extend it. And we tried not to reinvent wheels by implementing ProCloud Server as a middleware. We tried to find the standard. The standard is Open Service for Lifecycle, OSLC, open. I think you find it as open. I don't know. You will find it in the internet. There is a platform. It's independent. It originated by IBM. They just went in the wrong direction from my perspective and not supporting 100% OSLC anymore. But the principle and the idea of OSLC is a great one, and so we implemented that approach. It's more or less a RESTful API. The downside is you cannot play with Swagger or other fancy tools to implement it, because as the documents or the elements that we are providing are more generic, you need to use the resource description framework. So it's a little bit more effort to implement, but you can access on the server side, because Procloud Server is a Windows service, a service that runs on a server. You have the entire access to all model elements, all diagram elements. So we have really a lot of capabilities to deal with enterprise architect repositories in a real server way. If you have only the free edition of Procloud Server, there's a limitation, because we only provide the capability to modify or to load requirements. You need a licensed version to get the full-blown capabilities. And there is also an announcement for the new version. We will also support all modeling languages in the future. I don't know why we had some restrictions, but we had some restrictions to the major modeling languages. But with the newest version of Procloud Server coming soon, we will have no restriction for any modeling languages or MDG technology for extending Procloud Server. Yes. And this is OSLC means you can develop with any more programming language, but there is also a nice extension, and this is related to this list of the integrations. So you can build your own integration. It's called SBPI. I always thought it's Sparx something, but it's server-based plugin interface. It's a TCP/IP oriented thing. It's a I think it's a very easy interface to use. Where you can access, you can build your own custom integrations, and you can define your menus and how to navigate through the foreign system. And of course, you can also write your custom service. So you can have a script or a button in Enterprise Architect, or an event you are reacting on in Enterprise Architect, and then you can fire a service in Procloud Server that does something, send an email, start a process, automate something. That is a really powerful capability of the Procloud Server to provide these capabilities. And samples are provided for free, of course, for integration and for services. I think we have a C# implementation and a C++ implementation. And again, the interface is very simple to use, sometimes more tricky to configure. But if you have configured it correctly, this is a nicer way to make your own integrations to your own proprietary system, or systems that we have not integrated so far. Great news. We have also third parties implementing integrations for Procloud Server based on OSLC, RDF, or SBPI. We have one prominent one, that's Tasktop, that is also named on our website. We typically do not promote, but they are really supporting us from our number one, that they are using Procloud Server as the integration point for their toolchain integrations. Prolaborate, last but not least. Prolaborate is I focus a little bit on the publishing topic. There is a publish integration into Confluence, SharePoint, and Teams, Microsoft Teams. And of course, you can use it also for others, because you can have an iframe. That's a very powerful capability to integrate enterprise architect diagrams into other ecosystems. And we have a different kind of integration. It's a little bit competing somehow to the way of integration of Procloud Server. But here we have integration with Jira and DevOps 2 in Prolaborate. We will see what is the approach that makes more sense for customers in the future, as Prolaborate is now part of our family. But now let's go to the original topic. Why we should use SQL Server performing CSV import export. The good news with Sparx is that we have a very, very stable database structure behind our behind Enterprise Architect. It is stable since, I think, version 4, so almost 20 years or something like that. We had some minor updates over the years. I think in version 15 was the last update, and it was a minor one, so it's still reverse compatible, but it's recommended to update, of course, your database structure to the newest version. And I think, and what is also interesting related to the database structure is that Prolaborate Server brings database scripts, so you get some database scripts as source code for the most relevant. I think it's 20. I always try to count. I think something between 19 and 22, but it's approximately 20 tables that are relevant for row-level security, meaning where you hide information for, it's called visibility levels. They can say which information is allowed for a specific user group to be seen. And this is making use of the row-level security capability of Oracle or Microsoft SQL Server. And of course, if you look into that structure, we will do that later, then you get some insights of our database structure as well. And if we provide it, it's kind of, hey, it's also a question how to adapt it, because it's implemented as a sample for 20, I think 20 visibility levels, 20 tables, 20 visibility levels. But it means that there is kind of a commitment from us to have a very stable structure and to be as reverse compatible as possible. And I do really a recommendation for Thomas Killian's book, Inside Enterprise Architect, that shows how to query the database repositories with SQL directly. And also in Enterprise Architect, if you allow it in the security features, of course, then you can make a pass-through SQL statements. So if you have with the newest version, meaning currently version 16, we have the support of QEX file. QEX is SQLite. The good news with SQLite, there's recursive SQL queries supported directly. So Access was never supporting SQL in a proper way. So the good news is now we have, for the default format, we have a very proper database behind SQLite, and it supports complex queries. And this is really a helper if you want to perform high performance queries or analysis of your structure. Just an insight, it's a recommendation to have a proper meta model if you want to do that, because then you optimize your queries for your meta model. And this makes definitely sense as performance is also a thing for stakeholders. Oh, wow, it's pretty nice. You can navigate. And today we are just talking about hundreds of thousands of records. So you will see what we can do with it. Okay, what are the steps we will perform right now? So we have some time left. Yes, half an hour. So what we will do now in the live session is I will create a new database. I will implement the EA schema, the default schema. I will update, because with SQL Server we have a minor update. For images, it's optional, but I do it because it's recommended from my perspective, especially if you want to have a Prolaborate Server environment and with diagrams caching. Then we will implement the EA base structure to have some raw data, because the structure with the schema without data is not useful. You need some base information. This could be also adapted by you. And I think our sample is from 2018, but of course you can use as a base structure also your environment as a base. So this is just a sample again. So if you have different structure that you want to use as a beginner, for if you start a new model in Enterprise Architect, this is maybe also a good entry point to think about adapting the EA base. You don't have to do it with SQL, but you can see there somehow how it's done. Then I have implemented, not me, Michael helped me. I have the lucky situation is I have a guy who was doing SQL Server scripts, I think, since decades in a bank. He is dealing with millions of data and maybe billions of data and records. I don't mean the money, I mean the number of rows. And he helped me to build some CSV routines. And my only recommendation, my only requirement was we have a proper configuration in Enterprise Architect how a CSV is structured, and he must use exactly that structure that we define in Enterprise Architect, and that we can run the same logic later on in SQL Server. Then after we have implemented that, we will open the Enterprise Architect repo. Then we will make two views, one to import 1,000 records and one to import 100,000 records. And because I'm also not willing to make my CSV import export specification new, I have already prepared something. We'll import a reference data. We'll just check it out, how it's configured. And then we do it the EA way and import somehow 1,000 records. It will take approximately 2 minutes. In parallel, we will import a flat file with 100,000 records into SQL Server. Just write down a number, how many seconds you think on my local machine. It's a normal notebook, but it's local machine, to import 100,000 records into SQL Server, and then we execute the procedure to bring the imported data on the right place, that it is fitting to the enterprise architecture structure. Then we wait 2 minutes. You see some interesting numbers here. My best number was 1 minute and 3 seconds, but I don't know why. Sometimes my local machine takes 2 minutes and sometimes it takes 1 minute. And then we see what happened in EA. So, as promised, life is life. We do it what I said. Maybe I explain a little bit later this model. We have some documentation of it, of course. And of course, I have prepared also a backyard if something goes wrong. So I open a new enterprise architect session. And what I do, I create a new database first. So I have here a SQL Server 16, don't know, 2016, I'm not sure, 2020. I've no clue at the moment which version it is. But I create a new database. This new database I will name EACSV02, or maybe to make it more clear, Global Summit 2024. Then, yes, that's all to create a database. This is now an empty database, and of course I want to assign some rights to my user. I have a user here, Peter Lieber. I give myself some rights on this database just to have it. I give owner rights because I want to create something also. And then the first step in Enterprise Architect is that we have to feed. So there is nothing. So the tables are, there is no table. So the first thing we will do is to run some scripts. And I have prepared a folder. Where is it? So temporary CSV. We have here the SQL scripts, and I have prepared almost all scripts that are necessary. And as I said, the first thing we need is a schema. So the schema is just drag and drop it here, and you see the schema of Enterprise Architect. It is having authors, connectors, THTML, TObject. So the schema of Enterprise Architect is more or less straightforward. So I just run this and then we get the correct tables. The second thing is to run the update script. The update script again is optional, but it's personally recommended. It does something with the image file because I think there was missing or wrong. Yes, the issue was there was an auto counter the image, and this was an issue, and we have now a different implementation of it. So then we execute this one. So the schema is not necessary anymore. Last but not least, we need a basic structure because currently there is no content in the database. It's just the queries. And the structure means we fill the cardinality, the complexity types, the connector types, and so on and so forth. So that also means everything is configurable in Enterprise Architect. The data types, the languages, the programming languages supported, then the lists that we have behind, the implementation ways, and so on and so forth. So everything is in SQL. So and you can just run it. If you create it not with a Microsoft SQL Server, it's automatically done by Enterprise Architect itself. So now we have a base structure, and if we have a base structure, then we can open it in Enterprise Architect. So we have no current project so far, but we can say, okay, we want to have a cloud connection, server connection, sorry. We name it Global Summit 2024, and the name of the database was too long that I want to type it. I just copy the name. Yep. Then now it's a must to test the connection. Luckily, yes, it works. And then we can open the repository. And as the base is loaded, we have a model, we have some predefined values behind. What is missing was the configuration of my Exchange specification. So it was not part of the EA base, but I have prepared something that I can import this into Enterprise Architect. So with settings, we can also transfer the reference data, and I have prepared the reference data that contains a CSV specification. So we have a reference data, and there is a CSV specification, and then you can import it into Enterprise Architect. And now we have, if we go to publish again, we can see the Exchange specification. It's just ChatGPT something. I will rename it to template CSV. And maybe we use another file. So we use the smaller one. Yes, and we want by default to make an import. We want to preserve the hierarchy, and I have implemented a very easy configuration like the GUID, the name, the nodes, a type, then two tagged values, and this is maybe what we have defined so far. Of course, in Enterprise Architect, we can import it not on the root package, so we have to define a new view. It's hierarchy 1,000, I think it's 1,000 elements. And I just create this view, and now we can import it using the default capability of Enterprise Architect. We have here the hierarchy, we want to have an import, and we are importing this file. It is 1,000. I'm not sure if we ever tried it. I tried at the beginning for 10,000, but I don't want to wait 10 minutes. So if I want to run it, there is some warning because there's one invalid GUID, but no problem. It starts importing my elements. And okay, there is an issue. Why ever there's an issue. Okay, maybe I have, yes, this is life. So I go back to my script. Maybe I have just done a wrong ordering. So it's good UID name type, yes. Yeah, you need to have the correct order, and this is the issue here. So we go back to the specification, and we change name type. Name type nodes. Save again. And then make the import. And then now the import is running. I just click here and export because there is no progress bar. It's and it's not really responsive right now. That we see when it's over. And in the meanwhile, during that thing is running, it will take 2 minutes or so. We can wait if you wish, but I think we have not enough time for it. In the meanwhile, I will prepare my SQL Server to be able to import also data from such a source. So I go to the SQL scripts I have prepared. So we have some SQL script. It's called EA6 because there was a customer, maybe he is here today, that influenced that development. We have some log files that we want to create. It's just for seeing what has been done. So we just do the log file. And the second thing is the real stuff, the deployment modules. And we have implemented really both sides, import-export capabilities. So we have typical way of implementing SQL Server stuff and having a template table or a temporary table, and so on and so forth. So don't care about this logic in EA, in SQL Server, but there is quite a lot of sources that does it interpret the configuration of the template CSV and then import it into the right tables and right structures, and then give out also some feedback and whatever. Yeah, so it's a lot of how many lines? I have not counted it. Yeah, some lines of code that are mainly stored procedures and implementing these capabilities. So we have now, if we go to programmability, we have here some stored procedures available for CSV import, for export. To extend the CSV source, it's mainly for getting the hierarchy out into the properties to make the log files and update the object hierarchy. Let's see if Enterprise Architect is finished. Yes, it's finished. So the hierarchy is now in. So we have now 1,000. Don't care about the data. It's some data. I just cut it from the 100,000s and let it generate by ChatGPT. So it's really boring data. And ChatGPT didn't go me right. I said I want to have 100,000 unique software products, but it did not got what I wanted. But we have now 1,000 elements imported. I just named it classes. Of course, you can have any kind of stereotype on this place. To make the 100,000, the same principle, we create a hierarchy for 100,000. So it's a little bit more. And now we want to feed that from SQL Server. I have not done the last step for automation, so there is a file on a specific place, but I have here a execute SQL, so we can drop it again. This execute SQL needs a package name, says it wants a template type, has a template name, and we have here a table name. So the idea is to import the 100,000 first into a table. So, and this is in SQL Server. Again, it could be automated, but it's easy to run it. We say import flat file. Again, this could be a script, but we do the 100,000 here. 100,000. Maybe I should show it to you that it's really 100,000. CSV. So it's Ctrl Shift End. Oh, it's 101. No, it's because of the headline. There is one mistake. I want to have classes to have the same scenario. So replace package to class everywhere. So 100,000. And then, okay, I save it. And this table I want to import. And yes, just make an estimation as before. How long does it take to import 100,000 rows into SQL Server? Next, first you have to define the structure. It analyzes a little bit the data because we are not sure if there is no nulls. For the chars, it's okay. And now we start it. Insert data, blah, blah, blah. It's done. So 5 seconds, 3 seconds maybe. Just to be sure, this data is now in the database. So we have to refresh somehow because we can't see it. And of course, I've forgotten what's the name. Test host 100,000. So if we make a query, select count. Then should be, okay, this element not found, test host. Okay, interesting, test hosts. Okay, typo. It's again 100,000. So we take this table as a base And of course, it's not just a flat import. Of course, you have to feed the structure of Enterprise Architect. And what is especially challenging, we have 50 hierarchies. So we have a requisition of 50. So it means it's 5 million operations or something like that. I have not counted it, but there is some logic behind. Don't ask me exactly, but there is 5 million operations. So it will take some time. And in the meanwhile, I will explain how it's done. So we will see later how long it was, the duration of the query. So what is behind the scenes? So we have this Enterprise Architect 6 provides some capabilities like import and export capability. The process is very straightforward. You have a CSV file as an import file. You imported it to SQL Server. Then you run the procedure with some parameters. The delimiter is not a must because it's part of the definition. And then you get the Enterprise Architect. You have to interact with the Enterprise Architect metadata. And then, of course, an execution log is also written. But the Enterprise Architect data is also written. So, and if you go back to the export capability, there's the same. You have the Enterprise Architect metadata, an execution log. You have some parameters, the template you are fulfilling. Then you get an export. You get an export to a file system, and then you have your CSV file. And of course, we provide also the sources of this script. And to make some fun, we have one bug inside, and I left the bug inside. There is a README describing, so there's a file linked. There's a README describing how it is working. And of course, we have the DDLs that are required to run these scripts. So it's not only on file system, but is of course documented in Enterprise Architect in a proper way. And this way we have all the syntax highlighting requirement again for SQL Server as well. So let's look back. No, it's still running, but it's again, it could be 2 minutes. So if you are in presentation mode, it takes longer. Okay, whatever. Hopefully I have no issue there. No, 2 minutes and 8. Oh my God, it took longer than ever. Okay, we got some results. It's just the log file that is given, but now the 100,000 records are inside. We also can verify this because it's classes, we can just count the T object table. It's 2 more because we have the model and we have the packages. So if we go to our repository from the Global Summit, to see the 100,000, of course, it was done in the database. So for Enterprise Architect, we have to notify Enterprise Architect that there's some update. And again, what happens right now, it's, if we can open it, it has this hierarchy. And it's because it's all classes, it's all nested classes. Enterprise Architect is loading now the 100,000 records. So if there is no package structure, typically we are loading the packages first and then the structure. And if everything is nested, then we are really loading the 100,000. So it's not a very typical scenario. But now we have the 100,000 records in Enterprise Architect. There is some hierarchy again. The data is provided by ChatGPT, so I did not expect perfect structure. But you see how fast Enterprise Architect could be with a feed, an automation feed from SQL Server. Okay, this is what I wanted to show, and of course there are still some steps missing, but if you are interested, then please contact us because we provide Sparx services as well, and we are happy to help you to implement your automation for your data feed into Enterprise Architect, and also help you how to structure data that it becomes really performant, including we have customers with millions of records in Enterprise Architect. And I can't understand some customers saying that, oh, Enterprise Architect is slow. It is very often the questions how you structure your data or which window you have open. The traceability window with a lot of records is maybe not that clever. Having always huge databases, it's maybe also a challenge with same structure, but we have kind of If you want to search for something, like not for a package, in this case for a simple search, but if I want to search for SAP FI, and this is now thousands times in this data structure, then it makes a SQL statement in reality and gets the data fast back. We can check to make a check how much, how big SAP where. So again, if you want to know, again, there was a great reference. I have it on my machine as well. So we have seen that there is a, thanks to Thomas Killian, we have a good documentation of inside EA SQL. So I have the book, of course. You can buy it, and it's still accurate, and it's really great resource for our own data structure. But again, for a name, it's not that hard. We have t-object as a reference. So maybe it's very easy, but t-object, we have some columns here. And of course, it's name, where name like SAP FI, maybe, okay, it wants single ones. And there is a percentage at the end. So it's 10,000 elements. Again, it's a tenth of my data store, and this was just a SQL, just a database query. Just very important here is its capability, again, to provide very powerful SQL statements to get some, use the power of a database behind, to use also Enterprise Architect in a very performant way. So you can really use SQL statements to get information out from your data structure. So because we have some minutes left, I just wanted to point out again the data miner. So there is, if you go for our help, we have here an example model. And in the example model, there is a great feature called data miner. No, it was not in version 15, it was new. It's now not new again. So we have here data miner. And data miner provides here some JSON file as an example to import that one. And you see already in the data miner, this is also an MDG technology. You see that you can bind to another Enterprise Architect repository, to a file, to a URL, or to a database source. And as this is a file, you can save the stored document. And if you read the documentation, you have to store it in this directory. And that what it does is, if you have this JSON sample, then you use the interpretation, and here we have a methodology behind. And this methodology is, if you go for the read JSON, you can also see the behavior of this methodology, wherever it is. Okay. Context, read JSON. And that is just to let you know, behind the data miner, of course, there's scripting. But you can do everything. So there is a data miner API. You can do data miner actions, and we can do the processing of this data miner thing, and you can afterwards import also a diagram. So it's just a good sample how to import also diagrams from foreign sources. In this case, it could be a JSON file, or it could be a little bit downwards, could be as well Excel or a spreadsheet having 3 pages, objects, links, and attributes. And then you have an import capability, and then you have an automatic interpretation of Excel into Enterprise Architect. But long story short, the session was all about how to automate a huge amount of data into Enterprise Architect by using SQL queries, procedures, and I hope it was a useful session. And we see what happened in EA. It was 100,000 records in 2 minutes, 2 minutes and 8 seconds. Could be faster if you have a real proper SQL Server engine behind. And life is life. It's the same time that you need 4,000 records in EA with all the overhead of an user interface, of course. And every record is automatically written. But if you have a huge amount of data or you want to have a nightly run, then SQL Server way of automation could be an interesting approach for you. So thank you for attending this.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for the wonderful session. There are a bunch of questions raised from the participants, and those were all pasted in the Slack channel. Please take a moment to address those questions.
Sure. I will do. I will take 1 hour for answering all questions. Oh my God. Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for the wonderful session. Audience, thanks for your time and attention. If you have any questions, please feel free to continue the discussion on our Slack channel. The next session starts right after in 5 minutes by Chris Armstrong and Espen Rath presenting about model validation with inquiry. See you all in 10 minutes. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone.